Hi everyone! In this week's video I'm painting 3 flower Christmas cards using watercolors. I asked you in the YouTube community tab, Art Amino and Twitter whether you'd prefer to watch them as one video or as 3 individual videos, and most people said whichever way is fine, so I decided to go with one video this time. Otherwise I'd just be repeating things in each video since the paintings were fairly similar. I used this small Dale Rowney postcard watercolor paper pad, which is almost empty now. I found it at a discount at an art supply store once. It's acid free and 300 GSM, which is a pretty nice thickness. But the finished paintings might still warp a bit. The sheets actually look like postcards on the back with the address lines and a place for the stamp. I wouldn't put these in the mail without an envelope though, but you could put a sticker or something in the place of the stamp. I actually used these as Christmas cards last year. I made them on December 23rd to be exact, which some might think is kind of last minute, and I hand delivered them on Christmas Eve, so I didn't have to send them by mail at all. As mentioned in the previous Christmas flower drawing videos, I got help from the Flower Painter's Essential Handbook by Jill Bays for these paintings. She talks about both pencil sketching and watercolor painting flowers in the book. The book and the supplies I used will be listed below if you're interested in any of them. And the links are often Amazon affiliate links, so if you buy anything on Amazon through them, you're also supporting this channel at no extra cost to you, and it does help me out. I made quick colored pencil sketches of each flower off camera first to practice and figure out the composition before the actual pencil drawings and these watercolor paintings. I sketched out the outlines on the watercolor paper pad with colored pencils. You could use watercolor pencils if you want the sketch to blend into the painting as you add water, but I just did a light sketch with normal colored pencils with corresponding colors so they won't show up much under the watercolor painting. I'm not sure why I chose orange for the hyacinth leaves instead of green though. I wish I'd written notes while I was painting these so I'd know what I was thinking. I painted these with Winsor & Newton Cotman half-pan watercolor set, which has student grade paints. It also comes with palettes stacked up inside the top, so you don't need a separate paint palette for mixing paints. I used a bit of wet on wet on the leaves, adding darker green in the tips and letting it blend in. I left some white highlights while painting the first layers of the flower bulb and the leaves. And once the layer dried, I'd add another one of either the same shade or something a bit darker to part of the area to create shading or texture. With the flowers, I made the insides darker, leaving the edges of the petals light. I tried adding yellow in the middle of the flowers a bit too early, while the blue paint was still wet, so it blended into the blue more than I intended, and I realized it was time to let the painting dry before continuing. I was working on all 3 paintings at the same time, so I could let one layer dry while I was painting one of the others. And I'll show the clips in chronological order, so we'll be jumping between the paintings in this video. So the same process for the poinsettia painting. Sketching the flower buds and green and red leaves with soft Faber-Castell colored pencils, and then painting the first watercolor layers with a bit of varying shades for each leaf to not make the painting look too monotone. To make sure the different shades of red leaves didn't blend into each other, I left a little strip of white paper between them. When I edited the scan of the painting afterwards for my Redbubble shop, I cut these white sections out with the background, making them transparent, so whatever background color the item has could show through in those areas. But I did also make a version with a white outline, in which case they'll always be filled with white regardless of the background color. All of these 3 paintings are in my Redbubble shop as stickers, greeting cards, prints and home decor items, by the way. Link is in the info card or below. I then let the poinsettia dry and started on the amaryllis. I used a mix of a real flower, the first quick sketch, and the flower painting book as references for each of these paintings. You can always use photo references that could be your own photos or ones from a free stock photo site like Pixabay. Although I recently heard that free stock photo sites that claim the photos are free for commercial use with no attribution required, like Pixabay, might actually have pictures that are not free and have been uploaded by someone else than the owner of the image. So if you want to be sure you can use an image, do a reverse image search before using the image and see where it originated and what are the actual terms of use. After the first layers on the amaryllis, I went back to the poinsettia and added shading and leaf veins on the red leaves. On the green leaves, I left the lighter wash in the leaf veins and painted a darker layer between them. I made a lot less leaf veins than an actual poinsettia has, but I think it looks nice anyway. I finished this one first since it was my favorite painting out of these three. In the meanwhile, the hyacinth had dried and the yellow had spread all over, but it's fine. I just added a bit more blue on the flowers where the yellow had replaced it, while adding the darkest shading elsewhere in the flower too. In the amaryllis painting, I had previously painted an even wash on the open flower on the right, and now I added the second layer for only some of the petals. I think I like this painting more at this point than after what I did next. But while letting it dry, I turned to the hyacinth, which had dried off enough to add some final details. If you can't wait for your painting to dry, you could also use a hairdryer between layers, but I rarely bother doing that. I just tend to work on something else or a different part of the same painting during the drying time. I inked the little roots of the flower bulb with a micron pen, which is waterproof, so you can also paint over it. Beware though, because there are also fake micron pens that are not waterproof that might screw up your painting. I link to a web page below that shows you how you can tell from the design of the pen whether it's real or fake. I added little yellow dots of paint in the middle of the flowers, and this time only on the dry flowers to make sure they won't spread out again. And then I ruined the amaryllis by adding too much stuff to the open flower. I still like it, but I think it took a turn for the worse here. Also, the yellow watercolor anthers were not really showing up on the red flowers, and I of course hadn't thought of leaving white areas for them in the beginning, so I ended up adding a bit of acrylic paint on them to make them stand out on the darker red. And unlike the two other paintings where I used very little or no inking, I made a non-continuous outline for the whole flower using a micron pen. If you'd like to see more watercolor painting tips, there'll be a playlist on the screen you can click, or a link to the playlist below. Thanks for watching, bye!